Well, Melissa, I'm so glad to get to host this conversation today as we talk through kind of what does creating culture in your startup and the company that you're founding, and that doesn't have to wait till you actually have lots of people. So a little spoiler there, but yeah, I'm excited to share your expertise with the community. So will you go ahead and just introduce yourself and kind of what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, right on. Well, I'm Melissa, and I founded my company, ThriveOps Labs, which is a company of one. And my mission is really to help people, teams, and companies thrive. So my background and experience has spanned mostly in biotech and tech over the last 12, 13 years. So I started my career in HR, talent, and culture in a small company called Genealogics here in Canada. And we started as a company of 25 when I was there and grew to about 60 people. And then we were acquired by a Fortune 500 company down in the States called Illumina. And that was kind of the ultimate opportunity in terms of our acquisition portfolio. Like that was the number one pick, which was really exciting. And so I worked at Illumina for 2 years. And in that time, they grew from being a company of about 4,200 to a company of 8,000. So I saw a lot of growth there as well. From there, I went to another small startup and we grew that team from 25 to 50. And then we merged with another Canadian company of about 40 people. So that's kind of my M&A experience. I was the project lead for both of those and obviously managed all the culture changes that we stumbled through along the way. And then in the last few years, I've predominantly just been working with founders, really on the one-to-one basis and with their small teams. So mostly people under 5 employees or maybe 6 or 7. I really like this size, I think, because there is so much impact to be had when you're just working with a founder. It can have a massive impact on the product, the team, and all the things. So that's kind of where my focus has been in the last while.
Awesome. Well, I love that. Yeah, I love the different types of experience that you're bringing in to this conversation, but also that it's you've been in those shoes, you've been walking with people in those shoes as founders, and so I'm excited to dive in. So let's jump into the framework and kind of look at what is culture, what does creating culture look like in each of these stages. All right. Well, we've walked through kind of all of our sequential stages. But there is another stage that can happen kind of anywhere along the way because not everybody even makes it to the end. And again, like we said, that's okay. Sometimes you stay in different stages. But also there can be these big changes. And so the stage of events is all about changes. And those can be changes internally, like you mentioned as you're introducing yourself about mergers and acquisitions, like that can be something, or succession planning. But it can also be external. It can be, hey, it's a big market shift. It's a big regulatory shift. And the thing we do anymore is really difficult or maybe not even legal. And we're like, okay, we got to pivot. Or it can be something like a global pandemic that totally changes all the assumptions that we had before about a lot of different elements of our market or how we work. And so you can have these events, and they don't have to all be bad. Like they can be, being acquired is a good thing for, typically. And even other, like it could be a positive market shift. It could be like we're like, oh, we're struggling for customers, to all of a sudden we're like, holy cow, like the floodgates opened, and what are we going to do? Because we're going to make a lot of money and all hate our jobs if nothing changes and we do this for more than like a week or two. And so in these moments of events where it could be good, could be bad, could likely be a blend of the two, what does stewarding culture look like as a founder?
Yeah, well, as somebody who's been through so many versions of events through our careers, leadership change, market changes, pandemic, M&A, there's like really no blueprint for it. There's no specific blueprint. You have to be ready, right? You just have to be ready for what's thrown at you. But I think there is still so much to keep in mind because, I think in your framework, you talk about like what's like what do we have to keep intact, and like what needs to evolve, right? And that is like such a perfect lens to look at it. So this is usually where you have to really like everything that you've built in your culture, if you've done it right, is going to pay off for you so much right now. On the other hand, this is where some ouchy moments are ultimately going to happen, because people don't like this level of uncertainty, right? And
Yeah.
so the change and that level of uncertainty can be very uncomfortable for people. So I think this is usually when you're most likely to have a lot of attrition, a lot of people leaving your team, a lot of people like silent quitting, quietly quitting.
Mhm.
And so you want to keep people engaged at this time, but you also need to be really understanding where your team is at, I think. So another tool I shared was like uh, stay interview questions.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's just like really getting to the root of like, well, why did you come to work here in the first place? Why are you going to stay
Mhm.
here? And what's going to
Yeah.
make you leave? That's like ultimately what it is. But you can't, put the Google invite on their calendar and say stay interview. You have to have
Yeah.
relationships in your company that will allow for these conversations to happen. So it might not be
Mhm.
you as a founder. It's probably going to be an HR person or maybe a leader. Maybe
Yeah.
you have to have this with your leader, but this is where like real relationships are going to be leveraged, right? And that trust.
Yeah, well, and I think as you're talking about real relationships, it's a call to remember that even though a lot of the causes of the events that we talked about, whether it's a merger, an acquisition, market shift, whatever, they're more business oriented shifts. At the end of the day, we're running an organization of people, and those people are all trying to navigate together through this event, good or bad. And so it's like, okay, how do I care for the humans that I am stewarding as a founder? Um, is really important. And I think in a calm moment, we all resonate with that. We're like, yeah, that's the kind of founder I want to be. But in that event, that stress level goes up. We're not operating in the front of our brain. We're just kind of in that fight, flight, freeze kind of moment. So I appreciate you calling that out. I wonder, as you're describing that, it took me back, a little PTSD, I don't know, but yeah, like you said, going through a lot of these different things, but it made me think particularly about in a larger organization where we were doing a restructure. And it was very clear that like everything was changing, kind of nothing was staying the same. And there was kind of almost like nobody has a job, but next week we'll tell you what your job might be if you still have, it's like, why are we waiting? But then it wasn't next week. There was like this long gap. And so I was leading and had a number of levels under me at that time. We kind of adopted like a everyday, like, okay, here's what I know is true. Here's what I don't know that's still unknown. So we all know this is not known yet. Have any of you heard anything? Because stuff goes all around that you want to discuss as a team. Do you have any questions or any things I need to send up the chain? And we just kind of did that. Like it was like a stand up about the restructuring every day,
Yeah, exactly.
which seemed a little overkill, but I was like, okay, this seems like the only thing that otherwise, like you said, people totally would just kind of quiet quit just because they just didn't have the emotional bandwidth to do their jobs. And it felt like that was like enough of a pressure release valve. But I kind of wonder, like, are there like either tactics that are helpful, but also like it seems like the cadence of communication probably gets really tight and short
Yes.
in these events, Yeah, tell me
Overkill,
more
right?
about that kind of
Yeah.
level.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what you intuitively did as a leader is really intelligent, because your team's going to tell you how uncomfortable they are, and
Mhm.
just vocalizing things. And it's amazing how telling someone, honestly, I don't know the answer to that, is so much better than just ignoring the question altogether, right?
Totally. Yeah,
Or
that's the
not.
good thing to call out for the founders because we think, oh, I don't know the answer. I shouldn't say anything. But
Yeah.
like you're saying, that's not the play to
This is
make.
still what I'm figuring out, right?
Mhm.
And so in the event, you need, as a founder, this is where you need to have like your crew that you know you can trust, that you may be telling things that they can't tell other people too, right? And so there's like such a deep level of trust you're cultivating there. But you ideally have someone who's like a project manager for the event. Like if it's leadership change, maybe not so much, but you have somebody who is not the CEO or the founder giving messaging and regular updates. Like in the events I've gone through, we've always done just a weekly, but the weekly update looks like it's coming from the executive crew. Like, even though it's not the founder saying it, somebody is a middle person who is sure to get all of your questions, and I'm going to talk to the big wigs or doing all their big wig stuff, and I'm going to get your answers. And there's something about that, I think, that is really, really important. Yeah. In these times, I've typically seen once or twice a week communications. It feels like overkill, but it's just, it will slowly loosen as, honestly, as the questions can be answered.
Right. Yeah. As there begins to be some clarity and normalcy on the other side of the event. Is there anything, so like some of those examples we just talked about were kind of like, hey, if you're later in the model and there's more complexity, what if you are kind of early? Because that happens a lot too. There's a lot of events that happen in those early stages. Maybe you're just coming into sustainability, or before you're in adoption, or maybe you're even still in discovery and something's happening. So then it's a smaller crowd typically. And in some ways that's helpful because we all hear everything. But other times that might not be helpful. Is there anything that you would want to say to a founder of like navigating, keeping your culture with a small team in an event?
Yeah, so I haven't personally experienced like the smaller side, but I think for me, what I was so passionate to observing in all of the events I've gone through is the culture and like what that meant, and like when the beautiful things of the culture kind of got stomped down and when they got to flourish. And I think it's like, I think for anyone in terms of culture and like keeping culture, frankly, when you're getting a new leader, when you're getting acquired, there is going to be change. And I think, as hard as it is for me to say this, is that you have to make some conscious realizations on where your culture is going to shift and where it's not going to be the thing it was. Because I think if you understand that earlier and you don't try and fight for your culture and what it is, it's going to be easier. If you try and fight and then lose, it sucks. But if you go into it earlier, like, hey guys, these big things about who we are going to change now, instead of, hey, new company who's bought us, you can't come in here like that, right? I think relinquishing to the fact that somebody bigger has a say earlier, and doing so with grace and like a lot of communication as to why this is happening is good. And then be ready for people to quit.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is not what we all want to hear, but I appreciate you not just sugarcoating and be like, hey, it'll be all okay, because it will. They're
gonna quit now or later. It's like, or then you have to make the call, like, yeah, I can't have them quit, so I gotta kind of I gotta work it a bit longer. Maybe you have to do that. And that's where you as a founder, I think, have to have had those core values, really understand who you are and how you want to show up for the business, because it's in those moments that if you just stay aligned, you'll probably not cry yourself to sleep every night.
Appreciate that. We hope. And we'll have a list of resources if you are. No, founding is not an easy journey. And as we've talked through all of these stages, we see that there's a lot of highs, there's good things, there's lows, there's monotonous things, but the culture does really frame how that works all together. And even as we were wrapping up with events, I thought it was interesting that, as you're talking about, like, how a lot of it rests on you as a founder, kind of navigating the unscripted. But a lot of that is formed way back in the first thing we talked about, in that existential stage, when you talked about it being a personal operating system and you kind of have a culture of one. hey, if you take the time and you are intentional in forming that early, then you have it when you face the unexpected. And if you don't cultivate that and you don't strengthen it, then you don't have that foundation when you hit those unexpected changes. So I like how that actually kind of came full circle there. But as we kind of wrap up though, Melissa, what would you want to say to a founder, just kind of as we think about the whole journey, as they're creating culture, as they're leading? Yeah, any exhortations, any encouragements or guidance you want to leave with our founding community here?
Oh, well, I think I said it in the beginning too. It's like this is such a personal growth opportunity, right? And I think stepping into the fact that you're a leader early is a really good move. And this process of developing yourself is so important because people want you to see you level up, and you're going to want it for yourself. So doing the things that you need to do in order for that to happen, take the time out when you need the time out. If you're somebody who doesn't need the time out, great. But if you are, show your team who you are and that you take little breaks. It's another thing. It's like understanding how much your team and your company wants to know about your personal life. Just because you're a founder doesn't mean they have to know all the nitty-gritty details, right? That's not everyone's style. And so, giving yourself the grace and permission that, these are the boundaries that I'm going to have and create. And if you don't have those and that's the way you operate too, go for it. Just really being conscious, I think, of yourself can pay off so much at all stages. And so, yeah, if that's working with a coach early on or bringing on a co-founder to, help your gaps, is that getting an HR or chief of staff or someone that you can lean on to? Definitely having people in your corner you can trust is so helpful. It can be lonely at the top, so try and as you're growing your crew in your company, you definitely want to create a little team that you can trust, and vice versa.
Well, I appreciate you, encouraging us and exhorting us, guiding us as we walk through all those stages. Just continue to hear the themes of knowing yourself, of that self-awareness, of intentionality and communication. And it just seemed like, okay, if you're, as a founder, if you're listening to this and whichever stage you're in, those are probably some of the levers you're going to pull. But I encourage, if you're just listening to one of the stages, go back and listen to the others, because they do all weave together really naturally. So Melissa, thanks for sharing with the community. I love this interview. It's been a lot of fun. I think it will be a huge blessing to all of our founders. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.